Dolphins can talk to each other and communicate pain. Bulls have separation anxiety every single time they're moved away from their herd during cultural practices like bullfighting. And mother monkeys die of grief every single time their baby monkeys die. Hi, my name is Aina, and today I'm going to be talking to you about why I believe that animals should be awarded rights that are equal to those that humans currently possess. The fact that we consider human lives to matter more than animal lives is on the basis of arbitrary criteria that we perceive to have moral significance, even though we can't actually prove that it does. That's why I think that the criteria we should start using is sentience, i.e., the fact that animals are aware of their thoughts, actions, and emotions in similar ways to the ways in which humans are. This is true, A, because law aims to protect the most basic interests, but B, law also aims to protect the most vulnerable people against the most powerful, and that's exactly what we need to do with animals. We do this in every other aspect of law. For example, we give people the right to vote because we recognize that ordinary people need to have some power against a state that could potentially be oppressive to them, similar to the ways in which animals need to have some power against humans that are currently oppressive towards them. This is also the reason why we don't allow survival of the fittest as an adequate legal defense, because no legal system around the world would want to condone a rich and privileged person causing injury upon a poor person, similar to the ways in which we should not condone humans causing injury to animals simply because we perceive ourselves to be more morally superior. The biggest manifestation of this is the Cambridge Declaration of Consciousness, which states that a majority of animals, if not all, are sentient and feel pain but cannot overcome this because they simply do not have the capacity to do so. What I'm going to do over this conversation is simple. I'm first going to talk you through why I believe that animals do have rights, and then consider 5 or 6 alternative viewpoints on people who are critics to the fact that animals don't have as many rights as humans do. My premise is this: anyone should be given moral consideration if they are able to recognize it and undergo some suffering without it. The biggest example of this is industrial practices or processes where animals often undergo injury, harm, and psychological distress because they are handled by workers who are not trained to handle them properly or do not treat them properly in any way whatsoever, which means that they are often denied the most basic right given to humans, i.e., the right of any love, care, and affection. We already recognize right now that animals go through immense pain through these practices, which can be seen insofar as the US law mandates that cows and pigs can't be hurt in any way or injured in any way without rendering them unconscious first. Given that we already recognize that they cause pain, why are we not doing anything to stop that pain from happening first of all? The Australian philosopher Peter Singer once said that, and being an animal discriminator is similar to the ways in which people discriminate against certain races, i.e., a racist violates the principle of equality by giving greater weight to the interests of members of his own race when there is a clash between their interests and the interest of another community, similar to the ways in which humans put their interests over animals simply because they belong to a different species, which means that we don't have any actual reason for preferring our interests over the fact that animals also have interests too. Humans exploit animals right now because they are viewed as things. They are viewed as property without any moral value, and it is simply unfair, given their sentience and their ability to feel pain, to treat non-humans as replaceable sources and to deny them the one thing that we award all other humans, i.e., the right against exploitation of any kind. In fact, all things that appear to distinguish humans from animals, for example, forming relationships, craving food, craving water, etc., exist for animals as well, so there is no tangible difference between the two species in general. There have been a lot of movements recently that have started to recognize animals as legal persons. For example, the Non-Human Rights Project has started and filed a series of cases in New York courts that seek to establish legal personhood for chimpanzees that are being held in state lockup with the goal of protecting their rights to bodily integrity and liberty, a right that is awarded to every single human in New York and in the rest of the world. They also seek to have remedy through proxies like humans when those rights of those chimpanzees are violated. If we can recognize rights of things like companies as legal personhoods, then we should also be able to recognize animals that are more similar to us as legal persons too. The first alternative viewpoint that people often forward when they don't want to consider animals equal to humans is that of health. Most people believe that killing and eating and consuming animals causes them health benefits that they couldn't get otherwise. However, mainstream professional organizations, including the American Diabetes Organization, the American Heart Organization, the UCLA Health Center, and the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine, among other state departments like the US Department of Agriculture and the US Department of Health, have all acknowledged that a sound vegetarian or vegan diet can be perfectly adequate for human health, and some of these groups even claim that there are vegan and vegetarian diets that have significant benefits from them that you cannot get from consuming animal products. The second motivation that people often say is pleasure, i.e., even if you don't get health benefits, at least you get pleasure out of consuming these animals that you simply can't replicate with vegan and vegetarian alternatives. The first thing I want to note is that it fails to explain in any way how the pleasure we get from animals can possibly justify the serious harms that are caused while raising and killing these animals. To put things in perspective, killing one animal is equal to killing 10 times a plant, A, because of the number of plants that these animals consume over their lifetime, but B, because of the amount of pain, suffering, and torture these animals go through. The second thing I want to note, however, is that most vegans who once consumed meat in some form often note that the vegan diet is actually more pleasurable, if not just as pleasurable as a diet that contained animal products. But lastly and most importantly, clearly it is not the case that we allow humans to commit any action that produces them pleasure and call it morally permissible. For example, we don't allow people to commit theft even if the thieving of an object causes more pleasure and has more pleasure to the person that has stolen the object as opposed to the person that used to have the object before it was stolen, because we recognize that it is a morally wrong thing to do. Similarly, humans do not have the right to do whatever brings them pleasure in way of killing animals because it is simply a priori a moral wrong. The third motivation that people often have is failing to understand the connection between the wrongdoing involved in raising and killing animals for food to individuals' personal behavior. The only thing I want to note here is that the probability that not purchasing or not consuming the product will lessen or eliminate the wrongdoing is equal to or greater than the probability that purchasing or consuming the product will lessen or eliminate the wrongdoing. So even if people want to run that line of argumentation, at the very least, it remains value neutral, and millions of less animals are killed every single year. But the second thing I want to say is that we are also complicit we are also obligated to not be complicit in acts that are wrong, similar to the ways in which we are obligated to not be complicit in buying products that are a product of slave labor or a product of child labor. Given that we recognize that humans have obligations that extend beyond their direct repercussions and impacts, this should apply to animal rights as well. The fourth criticism that people often have is that animals don't have rights because they do not perform duties. But this is just untrue, because children also do not perform duties, but we still give them rights. We do this because we ascribe value to them as beings, and we should also ascribe value to animals then as beings, because there is no real difference between a child that is just hungry, that is just thirsty, that just wants some rest, and an animal that wants the exact same things. The last thing that people often say is that all diets cause harm. The response to this is obviously that you cannot expect somebody to grow all the crops and make all the food that they eat from scratch. Obviously, people are limited in the sort of things that they can do for the good of the earth, and what anybody is obligated to do depends on what he or she can do. And most people simply just cannot grow all the crops and eat their own, eat a diet that is made of their own food. That's not realistic. We only are obligated to take reasonable steps to minimize the harms that contribute to our food choices, but this is consistent with an obligation to not harm animals in any way when we're giving ourselves pleasure. The conclusion is this: since our animals are treated very, very, very badly in status quo, and either no harm comes, or the harm that the good that comes cannot justify the harm that is done to these animals, the pain, the suffering, the frustration, the death, and everything else that is done to these animals, we must accord them rights in some ways.